Time now for our first speaker, the founder of KWAN. He's an international leader in advocacy and relationship management. He's also advocate in residence for the NBL. Please make him very welcome, Jon Burgess.
Please welcome the 2013-14 Kia NBA Most Valuable Player, Kevin Durant.
Wow. Thank you guys so much. I'm usually good at talking, but I'm a little nervous today. First off, I'd like to thank God for changing my life and let me really realize what life is all about. Basketball is just a platform in order for me to inspire people, and I realized that. I come from a small county outside of Washington, D.C. called PG County. Me, my mom, my brother, we moved so many different places growing up, and it felt like a box. It felt like there was no getting out. My dream was to become a rec league coach. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to stay home and help the kids out and be a coach. I love basketball so much. I love playing it. I just never thought that I could make it to college, NBA, or stand up here today in front of you guys and be an NBA MVP. It's just a surreal feeling. And I had so much help. So many people believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. So many people doubted me and motivated me every single day to be who I am. I failed so many times and got back up. I've been through the toughest times with my family, but I'm still standing. One of the best memories I had is when we moved into our first apartment. No bed, no furniture, and we just all sat in the living room and just hugged each other. Because that's what we thought we made it. And when something good happens to you, I don't know about you guys, but I tend to look back to what brought me here. And you wake me up in the middle of the night in the summer times, making me run up a hill, making me do push-ups, screaming at me from the sideline of my games at 8 or 9 years old. We wasn't supposed to be here. You made us believe. You kept us off the street, put clothes on our backs, food on the table. When you didn't eat, you made sure we ate. You went to sleep hungry. You sacrificed for us. You the real MVP.
In preparation for the Money in Sport, I was looking to try and tie in what I'm about to share with you today with something that happened to someone else. And if you look back in your own lives, you have the opportunity to meet so many wonderful people that have come from different backgrounds, and I believe we all have those people moments, and those people moments in time over time help us realize what we need to know to do what we have to do. And for me, one of those moments was, which started in sport and then continued in business and in life and still does today, was at 15, I left Australia for aspirations to go to the EPL. I was there for 5 years in East London, and I left with expectations and returned with silence, isolation. For the next 15 years, I spent my life in communications and sports management. And it came a moment in a review where someone said something to me that I think I'll never forget. It said, "I'm going to call it because I care." So in one of my reviews, they were talking about the people piece. And he asked me a question around the people around me. And the question was framed as, have you got the relevant people around you to help you do what you need to do? And I quickly reflected and realised for many years I was led to believe I was a lot more connected than I truly was. So today is just for me to share with you some of my observations. So I've spent nearly 2/3 of my life trying to understand that question. And I spend hundreds of hours in coffee shops around the world with people in transition. People you know, people you don't know. But there's someone that is important to someone. And the question I said, well, what happened? An incredible career in sport, out of sport. You led sport, you're in sport. And the comment came back, I was so busy on task, I forgot about the people. But in my defence, my organisation never checked in on me. So I called it a decade ago, the biggest disruption sport and business is going to feel over the next decade is not digital. That's going to continue disrupting. It's have you got the relevant people around you to help you do what you need to do? So the question formed in, have you got the right people around you? I said, of course I do. Look at my performance, because that's how I'll be measured. It's all about matrix, it's scoring. When did people become a score? When did people become a score? And why was the only reason you're with me is because I can hit that score or that number. So the question that changed my world was how many people are in coffee shops around the world today thinking about you right now. So sitting in a review, had 15 years of significance in the role, and the question came was how many people are thinking about you right now? How many people actually know what's important to you? And I questioned him and said, well, why is that important? Because you won't see everyone you need to see and you won't learn everything you need to learn. And how many people are sitting in coffee shops knowing what's important to you and prepared to advocate for you? So that really challenged me a lot. So I went to organisations, I was looking for answers. Then I went to the sporting bodies all around the world just to understand. And then I ended up at the business school in the US. And everyone could tell me why. Everyone could tell me why having good people around you throughout your career will help you achieve purpose or significance. So everyone knew, understood why there was so much data analytics. How much more data do we need to tell us that we need good people around us? Today, you can determine someone's character through some sort of psychometric testing. You can determine someone's capability through an intuitive play or a performance play. How do you determine someone's connectedness? How do you determine whether the people, your organisation or the people you're leading have the relevant people around you to help you do what you need to do? 68% of our athletes we managed for a decade are all not in a good place. So where's the duty of care lie? Is it you? Is it the agency? Is it the families? Who is it? And why hasn't anyone tapped this topic about the importance of connectedness? So everyone can tell you how, but who can teach you how? So 90%, in my experience over the last decade, 90% of the people who underperformed in sport and in business was not because they didn't have good character. It's not because they didn't care. And it wasn't because they didn't have a level of capability to execute on whatever they were doing. It came down to, I was led to believe I was more connected than I truly was. And it never got tested until I was disrupted or I had a dip in my performance. Then I went to organisations, and only 10% of the organisations around the world had any way of determining when they onboard someone, promote someone, or transition someone on this particular topic. So I was invited to Harvard in 2011 to present what I'm presenting here today. And the professor said, it's quite interesting. I think you've actually uncovered a worldwide blind spot. Because if you look, when people perform, part of that performance is having good people around you. And when people dip and they lose momentum, and we have no way of determining that.
In a 21st century world, which is more global, digitally enabled and transparent, with faster speeds of information flow and innovation, and where nothing big gets done without some kind of a complex matrix, relying on traditional development practices will stunt your growth as a leader. In fact, traditional assessments like narrow 360 surveys or outdated performance criteria will give you false positives, lulling you into thinking that you are more prepared than you really are. Leadership in the 21st century is defined and evidenced by 3 questions. Where are you looking to anticipate the next change to your business model or your life? The answer to this question is on your calendar. Who are you spending time with? On what topics? Where are you traveling? What are you reading? And then how are you distilling this into understanding potential discontinuities? And then making a decision to do something right now so that you're prepared and ready. There's a leadership team that does a practice where they bring together each member collecting, here are trends that impact me, here are trends that impact another team member, and they share these and then make decisions to course correct a strategy or to anticipate a new move. Great leaders are not head down, they see around corners, shaping their future, not just reacting to it.
So finally someone called it. Finally, from some of the biggest organisations in the world called it. What was missing? It wasn't because people didn't care. It wasn't because organisations didn't care. It wasn't the fact that they didn't have great, capable people, but no one had ever looked at the connectedness component. Even today, the 3 largest search firms in the world cannot determine whether when they place someone in a role that they can conclusively determine that level of connectedness based on what they need to execute. But we can determine character and capability. So what I'd learned around the world, so when I was disrupted, I spent 2/3 of my life in front of people I didn't know to learn what I needed to know. And the way it was mapped out to me by the top 1 to 5% of people in sport and in business is they took the complexity of how people interact, but they had a very, very firm point on how people are interacting today, a very, very firm point. And what they're basically saying is that when you go and meet someone in today's world, based on what you need to do, everybody wants to go and collaborate with someone. What happened to trying to connect with someone first? What happened to this? Why have we missed a step? So much opportunity was getting lost because we went there with a big expectation to go and collaborate. And a lot of those opportunities and relationships fell over through no result. Not because people didn't care, that's how they were taught to care. One of my esteemed board members said recently, when asked by a Big Four CEO, what do you look for when you're building a relationship? And he goes, don't tell me you care, show me you care. Don't tell me you care, show me you care. So the way it was mapped out to me is all I had to do was to raise my consciousness. Because when you raise someone's consciousness and keep them in the moment, they can do anything. It's not about changing who you are, what you are, and where you are. It's not about changing that. It's just about raising your consciousness and using curiosity as a defining value proposition, not a warm and fluffy word. Using curiosity as a defining value proposition. The top 1 to 5% of people I've met in sport and in business have always said, the only point of difference I have is my ability to ask great questions. So what they taught me was change the way you think about things, and the things you think about will change. So I use that as a mantra right across all my business. Change the way I think about the people, and the people I think about will change. And as a result of that, suddenly I started building these relationships that started thinking about me where I didn't have to call them all the time. Remember that first comment? How many people are in coffee shops right now? How many people here today are thinking about you right now, are meeting people? Let me give you a statistic. The average person sees 500 people a year. 10 people that you know are going to see 5,000 people this year. From that, it started building people thinking about me and then started advocating for me without asking. I didn't want to use entertainment as a catalyst anymore. Entertainment is a very, very expensive way to maintain and sustain relationships. When I was in my role, people lost jobs. I didn't look after a relationship. I used entertainment as a catalyst. I lost clients. People lost jobs. So understand why this group of people are important to you. It's very important. I need to, if I can connect with you and learn something, it'll make me better the next day. So I just shifted. So I decided that I'm going to get to know the backstory and then I can navigate the front story. Everybody wants to know the front story. I found it more valuable knowing the backstory and then navigating the front story. And as a result of that, understanding who's important. But the biggest thing, if I could leave you with anything here today, is Simon Sinek, a world thought leader in the why, which is wonderful. He's finally taken the complexity out of marketing. Well, I'm taking the complexity out of relationships. Everybody responds to kindness. Everyone, at some stage. And if I understood what was important to people, if I understood genuinely what was important to people, I could change lives. If they knew what was important to me, they could change my life. So for 15 years, I didn't read books. For 15 years, I went around the world to understand and learn from you. And I would sit in a meeting with you and be very conscious, so raise my conscious of how did you introduce yourself? How did those questions, what were you doing? So I learned so much from people I don't know than from people I do know. And I got challenged at a conference in Tokyo recently, and it said, John, if there's one thing you would share with the audience that you wish you would have learned sooner, what would it have been? And I said it was very clear. I said, if I was really honest, I spent far too much time looking up the sky for wisdom, then went online for wisdom, and I forgot about the person across the table. I've learnt more from people that no one knows than from people that everyone knows. I've learnt more from that person there. And then he responded and said, well, I'm mentored by Richard Branson. And I said, yeah. And I said, well, let me ask you one question. What has Richard Branson taught you that's been so revolutionary that you haven't learned from someone you cared about? I'm not diluting it. What I'm trying to say is that start looking at across the table. And you've got a wonderful opportunity here at Money in Sport to start those conversations, to go and connect with people as opposed to wanting to collaborate with people all the time. And as a result of that, if I understood what was important to people, I could change people and they could change me. So I just thought, what if I could connect and collaborate with people to remain relevant and top of mind, and we think about each other 1% this year? It's going to be a great year.
The second question is, what is the diversity measure of your personal and professional stakeholder network? You know, we hear often about good old boy networks, and you know, they're certainly alive and well, many institutions. But to some extent, we all have a network of people that we're comfortable with. So this question is about your capacity to develop relationships with people that are very different than you. And those differences can be biological, physical, functional, political, cultural, socioeconomic. And yet, despite all these differences, they connect with you and they trust you enough to cooperate with you in achieving a shared goal. Great leaders understand that having a more diverse network is a source of pattern identification at greater levels and also of solutions, because you have people that are thinking differently than you are. Third question, are you courageous enough to abandon a practice that has made you successful in the past?
And the reason I have these wonderful videos, because it's never been about me. This journey's never been about me. I'm never the node of anyone's wisdom. I'm never the node of anyone's network. There's simple messages and simple things if you're conscious enough. And that's all we're thinking about. So I don't think you need to change anything about you. It's not about getting more friends, it's more family. I think a lot of it is around raising that consciousness. And using curiosity as a defining value proposition. So when you can take a relationship from a contact to a connection to an advocate, so go from on mind to front of mind, top mind. But the only thing missing in the world is not because people didn't care, is everyone's telling you how to build these communities, these relationships, but who's teaching you? There is no framework in the world to evaluate and enable an individual to help them to be significant or successful in their role. And people are losing jobs, not because they don't care, not because they haven't got good capability, and not because they don't want to be connected. One of my clients had a global initiative to get 35% of women in client-facing roles by 2018. They're at 11.5%. And when they went around the world to understand what was missing to these wonderful female leaders, we've always been told the importance of a network. We've got great people around teaching us how they do it, but we've not got a framework to teach us on how to do it. So I'm going to finish off this presentation. I've learnt a lot, but to me, this is by far one of the greatest lessons that I've learnt.
Stories are what women tell to their children and what eventually their children tell to their children. But the first stories are how to be human.
I finally learned that helping others is the most important thing in life. We're all in a rat race. Look at this. We're in a rat race. To go where? Stop and look at the people around you and say, can I help that person? It's so important. That's all. I'm done.
There is no meaning to life. You have to make there be a meaning.
Change the way you think about things, and the things you think about will change.
Love! L-O-V-E, love. And being loved.
one thing you will take with you when you leave is your story. It's an eternal story.
The founder of this wonderful movement was asked a question on Channel 7. So you went up to random people in New York and asked them for their story. He went, yeah. And it went silent. So the presenter couldn't get his head around it. So let me get right. So you didn't know these people, but you went up and asked for their story and they told you everything. He goes, why? He goes, because no one ever has. Have a think about that. If you don't know the backstory, you've got no way of navigating the front story. So on that, the thing I'd like to leave with you today is, I'm not for one moment don't think you're connected, far from it. I'm not for one moment thinking that you haven't got good people around you. What I'd like you to consider is one thing. If you haven't evaluated you, your leaders and teams in 2018-19, then you've got no way to determine them whether they're prepared or not. Because you wouldn't put someone in a role if they had bad character, because you test them out. You wouldn't put someone in a role if they couldn't execute on the role. So why would you send children, fathers, mothers into a world without understanding this thing called connectedness? So thank you very much. I'm not sure if there's time for any questions, but Luke, is there? Yeah. So what was the one thing that you reflected on in the presentation? Yeah. Sorry, I can't get my angles right here.
That's awesome. No, I just found it fascinating because I never thought of it, but you're right. We all spend our life trying to network with people, but was there something that happened that made you go down this track? Was there something that you suddenly recognised after all those years?
I think we all have moments. So was there something that made me go down this track? I was led to believe I was something I wasn't for many, many years. In my sport and in my business life, because no one framed it up, I'm going to call it because I care. So that moment, maybe I was ready to learn at that particular time, but I felt quite sad when I had arguably this career that looked all positive, lifestyle, living, and no one was thinking about me. That threw me. When I knew and I saw people in coffee shops, seeing people I would like to meet. And I'd walked up to one particular person, one of my board members, and I said, Charles, that person, he said, what a wonderful leader. I would love to learn from her one day. And he goes, why didn't you tell me? I've known her for 10 years. I didn't see it coming. And the other point was a wonderful young leader that I'd worked with. I'd helped for 2.5 years, did the right thing, and she'd never thought about me. And that sort of troubled me, and it didn't trouble me because I just did it because it was the right thing to do. So I did reach out to her, and I called her because I care, and I said, X, have you been happy with our conversation? Oh, I loved it, and the connections. And she went, oh, you've built half my business. I said, that's wonderful. And I asked the question is, you left our last meeting with a comment that troubled me. And she says, if you need anything, John, let me know. We've been talking for 2.5 years. And then she returned. I said, well, why haven't you thought about me? And she goes, because I don't know how. And I said, I apologise. So I honestly, in my experience, over 20 years and 15,000 people later one-on-one, I just don't think the people that we think we know what's important to us. Yep.
How did you know people weren't thinking about you?
Weren't thinking about me.
How did you know that they weren't thinking about you?
That's a good question. I think when you were connecting them and they were with people that you connected them to, and they were introducing those people to the people you'd like to meet. So I'd facilitate an introduction between you two here, and you're in my network, and I've connected you, and then when you're meeting with this colleague, you're talking about people that I would love to meet. So I just tend to think, if you look at the onboarding process now, from all the big four firms, big tier, no one's got a way of determining this very rich and source component. It's not because they can't execute. And when people have lost roles, in saying that, is one of the most senior people in retail globally called bad behaviour at a board level and got thrown under the bus. Hasn't recovered in 3.5 years. So this is a typical phone call I'll get from someone, John, a friend's in trouble. Now, I've not said no to anyone in 17.5 years because I learned advocacy is about generosity, it's about curiosity, and it's about consciousness. They were the three things that I lived and breathed. And I said to this person, you've had an incredible career, what happened? And again, same old things. Too busy on task, forgot about the people. But in my defence, my organisation never checked in on me. So where's the duty of care lie? Is it the individual? So essentially what I'm preparing people for is the inevitable. When you'll want to do something one day, have you got the relevant people around you? That's it. I'm just preparing for the inevitable. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Please thank Jon Burgess,
Thank you.
who demonstrated this morning that passion and how to get that deeper approach to relationship management.